I'm Jason with Born Handy, and this video is the first in a series of videos where I'm going to show you how to build the cabinets and shelves that went on either side of this aquarium, why I built them, and some other places where you might use them, because not everybody is going to have the same needs that I did for hiding a bucket. For instance, in my case, these two items here are designed to hide auto water top-off systems like this. In fact, this used to be the system that I used to slowly add calcium saturated water to the aquarium. But this would only last 3 or 4 days, and one, I needed something that lasted longer, and for two, I just needed something that was a little bit more attractive to the eye, and so now that's done with this 5-gallon bucket down here. So I can get rid of this. I have one bucket that I use for the saturated calcium water, and of course I have a second bucket that's also hidden and out of the way, and this bucket is used to replace evaporated water as it leaves the aquarium. In addition to that, I also have drawers on the top. These drawers hold, things like test kits, fish food, just other odds and ends that the aquarium kind of has to have in order to stay operational. At the end of the day, an aquarium like this has a lot of equipment and gear, and there just never seems to be enough places to store those things. And so by adding these side cabinets, that solved a lot of problems at one time. In addition to that, it also helps to add to the display in that these cabinets are displaying lots of fossils and other minerals and things that I've collected over the years on both sides. And as a whole, all these things come together to create a display that's not just an aquarium, but an entire portion of the home is dedicated to a display that all goes with the aquarium. And here you can see that the cabinets really don't impede the view of the aquarium in any way. They just simply add a little bit of an extra detail to the aquarium setup itself. This is also a good opportunity to compare the difference between a completely custom job and the open grain look of the oak as compared to a piece that's 100% off the shelf, and you can see that the look is fairly similar but not quite exactly the same. And the truth is, I think most people are absolutely okay with the look that you achieve with off-the-shelf materials. So if you have a few basic woodworking skills and a handful of tools, I'm going to walk you step by step how I built these, and almost everything used is available at your local big box store with just a couple of exceptions, which are still fairly easy to get your hands on. I'd also like to point out that I designed these cabinets with the beginner in mind, and so everything that we're going to do here are pretty much beginner steps. And the only real caveat to that is that it may not in fact feel like a beginner project simply because there are so many steps. But the reality is a lot of basic steps can still add up to build a nice piece of furniture. So even if you're not ready to build a piece like this, you still may want to see what goes into creating a piece of furniture that allows me to hide my buckets. So with a basic introduction and the tour out of the way, let's get right into the construction of these two pieces. Alright, so at this point I'm just going to have to ask you to overlook the condition of this shop. The other sister piece to this I just finished building, and I wanted to do that so that I could test out these instructions to make sure that I wasn't giving you something that was maybe out of order or incorrect. So in any case, I do want to say that all of the plywood that we use for this build is 3/4 inch plywood, even the drawer bottoms and the backs of the cabinets. The reason I did it that way is because I was trying to keep this down to a minimum cost. And both of these units were built out of one sheet of plywood apiece. And I just didn't see a reason to go out and buy additional plywood just to get a thinner section so that I could make a thinner drawer bottom or a thinner shelf back. And for the tabletop build, we're going to use this material here, which is basically face frame material. In this instance, this stuff is 2 inches by 7/8 of an inch. You could have gotten by with 3/4 of an inch and been just fine, but 7/8 is what was available, so it's what I bought. I'm going to use this wrapped around the tabletop like so, in order to hide the fact that the end of it is plywood. So go ahead and start off by cutting yourself 2 pieces that are about 21 inches long, and then 2 pieces that are around 17 inches long. Once we have those pieces cut out, I'm going to go ahead and swing and cut one side down to 45s for each piece. Sometimes I see people kick these on and then just chomp through the piece, and although it cuts through, when you try to put 2 pieces together that have been cut that way, you almost always end up with a joint that doesn't come together cleanly. So now we can take the pieces that we've just cut and do a dry fit against our tabletop and see how we did. So now I'm going to make a mark at exactly this corner location over here on this side so that I can make this miter cut and it be an exact fit when the other piece goes on. Initially I'm going to sight down the blade to make the cut, and I'm going to make it a little bit wide and then nibble in just a little bit until I just touch the line that I've made. And now that I think I have this exactly where I want it, I'm going to put a 45-degree angle on this piece and we'll do a test fit. And that looks like a pretty tight fit. Now I'll mark the other two sides, cut the miters, and make a piece that fits over there. Okay, after I cut them a little bit oversized and spent a few minutes trimming the edges down until I had a perfect fit, at this point I have a fit that's good enough for me, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and join two pieces of this frame together at a time. I'll apply glue and then join each section to the tabletop, and then I will join the two sections together. And I'm going to do that with pocket screws. I've got a sample piece here to show you where these pocket screws are going to go. One of the things that you definitely don't want to do is put your pocket screw out here. First of all, the little hole that you drill for the pocket screw would protrude through the side of the piece that you're trying to have this concealed in. And secondly, when we put a routed or a decorative edge on this, our screw would be much too close to the end. So what we want to do is drill our pocket screw in such a place that our screw almost passes through the inside corner. That gives us plenty of room to run a router if we want to add a decorative edge later, and it gives us plenty of room to make sure that our pocket hole is actually hidden. And since I'm getting ready to use the pocket screw jig, I'm also going to add pocket screws to the tabletop, because the tabletop is going to join to these pieces with pocket screws as well. There's really not an exact science here. I think I'll just put a couple on each end and then a couple on the front and the rear, just like so. These lines match up to lines that are down here on the pocket screw jig, so I can place it in place, move the lever forward and clamp it, and then drill the pocket hole. And now I have pocket screw holes in both of the short pieces. There is no need to do the same on the long pieces. So now that I'm ready to join the pieces, I'm going to put just a little bit of glue here, doesn't take much, and I'm going to smear it out on this grain, and I'll wipe the excess on my finger off on the other side. And we'll push the two pieces together and get them as perfectly aligned up as is possible. The pocket screw jig also comes with a clamp like this. If you don't have this type of clamp, I'm sure that a different type of wood clamp, maybe with some wooden blocks to hold this flat, would do the job. But since this one's here and is convenient, we'll be using it. And it basically goes on and it self-adjusts to the thickness of the material that you're working with. And we'll clamp it like so. And in this case, I'm going to use one of the wood screws that's for hardwood. And we're going to set it in place. I'll set this out of the way momentarily. And we'll do the other side. And with that out of the way, I'm going to add just a little bit of glue to the inside of this face frame. And I will set it in place. And I'll have to pull on the top. And I could use a clamp to do this, but it'll be just as easy for me to pull by hand. And I'll get this secured. And with that one screw in place, I'm going to pull this piece up. And I'm going to put the rest of the screws in using this clamp to keep the tabletop flush with the frame. And with two screws in, holding the piece flush with the top, what I'm going to do is remove the initial screw, and I'm going to go ahead and clamp it so that this piece is flush as well. I am going to use a couple of clamps to help me pull all this together. Not super tight at this point, just enough to hold. Ordinarily, I would tell you to take a wet rag and wipe off any excess glue, but in this case, there's really not enough to worry about. So what I'm going to do is just set this aside to dry. This is going to be a painted piece, so I'm not too worried about glue causing problems with the stain laying on. Next, we're going to take a piece of our face frame material, and we're going to mark it at roughly 16 inches, and we're going to do that 2 times because we're going to glue this up, and this will be used a little bit later on the front of the piece when we're looking to create an archway, and this piece just isn't wide enough. I got a couple of clamps put on pretty loosely, and before I tighten those up, I'm going to align the pieces just as before using the clamp that comes with my Craig pocket screw set. And in this case, I will use a wet rag to clean up any of the glue squeeze out. This will just be too much to sand off later on, but I'll do that off camera. This wraps up the first video on this build, and in the next video we're going to rough in the base cabinet and the shelves. If you'd like to build these and save yourself a lot of time, you can download the cut sheet from bornhandy.com. I'll include a link in the description for that. The cut sheet's only a couple bucks, and you'll easily save yourself a half a day laying out these cuts on the plywood yourself. And anytime someone downloads, it goes a long way toward helping me to make other videos in the future. So if you like what you're seeing, a thumbs up and a subscribe also goes a long way to help me make videos. And as always, if you have any questions or suggestions, drop those in the comments section. And until next time, this is Jason with Born Handy.